The problem is there's no known cure, and we probably won't even treat you because we have no hope.
I don't think it's an accident that the information on this has been known for 15 or 20 years.
They told my parents I was going to die.
No one else should have died of heart disease. We had the cure. We've had it for decades.
It's going to take a radical shift in mindset.
So I can't blame doctors. They're not trained in this field.
You know, my genes have already set my destiny.
What I thought I knew about healthy eating almost killed me.
3/4 of what we suffer from in America is due to the food that we eat.
It's not food to me. It's torture.
I think we haven't really focused on the quality of food that we take. We're more interested in convenience.
Food is medicine.
You gotta put back into the earth in order to get back.
Changing what I put into my body can make me live longer. Why doesn't everybody know this?
About 19 years ago, we were staying at the house, getting ready for Easter the night before, dyeing Easter eggs and making cookies and setting the table. And my father and my husband were watching television. This is hard for me, I'm sorry. And in the wee hours of the morning, I heard my mom cry out that something was wrong. And we raced up to their bedroom, and he was gone. He was 58 years old, and he was gone.
Everybody knows suffering. It's there.
People are hurting, and it's a tragedy. And it's important to me.
Good evening. The news hit around breakfast time as a lot of Americans were sitting down in front of a plate of bacon or sausage.
The obesity crisis is getting worse in America, not better.
We have to cut carbon pollution in our own countries to prevent the worst effects of climate change.
This undercover video shows chickens being buried alive.
You want to tell the story dramatically and say, you're in a hospital and decide to change your mind, you know. And I don't believe anything anyone says in a hospital, on New Year's Eve, or during sex. Those 3 times, all information is considered invalid. Everybody that goes to the hospital says, you know, from now I'm going to eat right, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to do all this. And they're always lying. Say the same 3 things, actually, during sex and on New Year's Eve. So I was in the hospital with bad hypertension. And I did not make any promises to change my life. I was, you know, it's probably 330 then. Got to get your weight down to about 280 where we can control your blood pressure with drugs. And I said, well, is 280 where I should get down to? And then he said this sentence that blew my mind. And it was the first time I'd ever, something you're, you know, anybody watching this is very familiar with, but I wasn't familiar with it. He said, well, you know, if you get your weight down to 220, 230, you probably wouldn't need drugs at all. And I said, what? I'd thought that my hypertension was genetic. And he said, well, it is. And I said, well, no, you're telling me that the drugs that I'm taking are, telling me these are fat guy drugs. I thought they were, you know, genetic drugs. He said, well, yes, of course. But I said, well, it can't be both, of course. You can't say it's genetic, and yet if I got down to this weight, I wouldn't have it. And that just bugged me. That just bugged me tremendously.
We're eating ourselves into the most overweight and obese population in the history of the human race.
In this country this year, we'll spend over $3 trillion on health care. Somewhere between 1/2 and 75% of that are lifestyle-related problems.
You get out of your health exactly what you put into it.
And we have been putting the wrong fuel in our body.
We really didn't learn much of anything about nutrition in medical school.
I was really angry. I just could not understand why I didn't learn any of this.
The system is set up to reimburse kind of pills and procedures. You get paid to do things for patients. You don't get paid if your patients get better.
We live in a pill-popping generation. Everybody wants a pill for this or a pill for that.
Big Pharma is in the business of us being sick.
They fund medical education. That's what you learn about.
We've never had more pills in human history.
and yet we've never had more chronic disease.
There's the food industry, which is a $1 trillion industry.
There's a lot of people that are making money off processed foods. There are a lot of people that are making money off meat, a lot of people making money off dairy, and it's a huge lobbying power.
Take away the supervision from the USDA and give it to another body. They're handing out subsidies with this hand, and with the other hand, they're telling the American public what to eat.
You know, they don't look at meat and say, this is full of saturated fat, cholesterol, DDT, environmental contaminants, infection. Not part of the sales pitch.
Dairy is the most toxic thing people put in their body. I won't even call it food.
People that are eating the standard American diet don't understand, number one, the scientific implications of that in their body, but two, they often don't understand that food has enslaved them by this addictive component.
Foods are the cause of diabetes, of heart disease, of many forms of cancer, of hypertension. And if they're the cause, they can also be the solution.
What is on our plate is really affecting our environment.
More global warming is caused by livestock consumption than all forms of transportation combined.
Something's wrong with this paradigm, and we need to shift paradigms and find out what works better.
We're eating ourselves into our graves.
Since a small child, I've had a love of plants. To have this living organism within this tiny little package, a seed, and you plant it, and it grows into such beauty and potential.
I am a product of the state of New Jersey. I went to Rutgers, the state university, got a botany degree, and then went on to the state medical school. I received standard academic training, then went on to an internal medicine residency in Washington, D.C. at George Washington. As a newly minted doctor, my father, who was an attorney, 69 years of age, was suddenly diagnosed with end-stage metastatic pancreatic cancer. He was given a prognosis of 1 to 3 months to live, offered some standard treatment, and because there's very little success with that agent, my father decided to do nothing and just go home and prepare for death. I knew in my world that I'd come from, there was just nothing available. And even still to this day, there's very little available for pancreatic cancer. So I went to my local library and finally came across some books on food, brought these books home for my father. The books were on a whole unrefined plant food way of eating. He grasped onto it and completely changed his diet. And a year later, we went back. When the doctor saw my father walk in, he looked a bit shaken. He asked my father what he was doing there and why was he still alive. My father started to tell him about broccoli and brown rice, and the doctor lost complete interest in what my father was saying. That was the point for me that changed what I would do as a doctor.
Our medical community in general has really focused on symptoms of disease. We see it throughout our whole pharmaceutical industry and our whole approach to care.
And, we have this acute care model in healthcare today. And it was designed 100 years ago to treat communicable diseases and injury. And we're still trying to treat chronic disease now with that same acute care model, but it doesn't work. We're trying to treat diabetes and heart disease the way we treat strep throat with pills, but it doesn't work.
I feel a little disenfranchised, if you will, to have gone through 4 years of medical school and 6 years of training after medical school and never been introduced to the idea that your health is so closely related to what you eat.
When I entered into practice, I had patients constantly ask me, what should I eat, doc? How should I exercise? What should I do? I would throw out little arbitrary words and say, be good the majority of the time. Live by the 4-7s rule. If you do well 4 out of 7 days, that's good enough. I started to become troubled by that, and that I was actually giving advice, professional advice to individuals when they were asking without a fund of knowledge.
Everybody knows that doctors don't get any really meaningful education about nutrition.
Nutrition is really something that maybe you get 1 hour, maybe you get 2 hours.
Nutrition in the 1970s in my medical school was very, very limited.
I really still feel that it's nearly criminal.
There really haven't been many opportunities to discuss nutrition in depth because the topic only comes up in passing.
Maybe they assumed that we knew.
The average physician in this country has less than 20 minutes of nutrition training, period.
Well, nobody teaches you anything about nutrition in medical school.
What I was taught was nobody changes their diet anyway, so just, do what you can.
I hate to say it, but your physician probably knows less about nutrition than you do.
We're taught to treat diseases after they occur. We're not taught how to prevent them in the first place.
I think that society in general has a broken relationship with food. We're a society that's chronically fed from the time we get up in the morning until the time we go to bed. And when you think about it, the only species that are obese and chronically ill are us and the pets we keep warm and fed. And they get exactly the same diseases.
If you eat the same things that most Americans eat, you're going to get the same diseases that most Americans get.
I'm a steak guy.
Fish.
Sushi, actually.
I like meat. Anything protein-based.
Steak, potatoes, greens.
Good cheese. I don't really eat processed cheese.
Lasagna.
Hamburgers, french fries.
Red Bull and a cigarette, which I don't need neither or. But you know what? I'm so old now, I'm just going to do it anyway.
It's sad, but I think I can say this honestly. Probably 95% of America has no idea how to eat. Who taught them? Grandma? No, it's the television that's teaching them.
Nutritious, delicious. Above all else, beef. It's what's for dinner.
Got milk?
Ah, the power of cheese.
Eggs. Incredible energy for body and mind.
Well, I grew up in Texas eating meat 4 or 5 times a day, and I liked it.
I ate a high salt, sugar, fat, processed food, pizza, ice cream, candy kind of diet.
I was pretty much a standard cholesterol-holic that grew up on a dairy and a beef farm.
We loved our cheese, we loved our ice cream and yogurt and steaks and hamburgers on the grill.
Grew up on a dairy farm, actually milking cows, but believing along the way that the good old American diet was as good as it gets.
Certain foods are essential. We must have them daily for the sake of health. Meat, cheese, fish, poultry, vegetables, green and yellow, fruits, 2 or more servings daily, at least 1 raw, citrus fruit or tomato often, and eggs, 3 to 5 a week, but 1 a day preferred. Cereal and bread, rich golden butter, and milk, at least 1 quart of milk a day.
I've come to see aging in America as a function of accumulated abuse of the human body.
Then everybody gather round and dig into those sizzly, juicy Armour Star Franks. Hot dog diggity, are they good? Armour Star Franks.
Because Wonder Soft Whipped Bread is made from batter, not dough. It has no holes. Get Wonder Soft Whipped.
One of the main reasons that we started eating processed food was it encouraged the shelf life of the product.
We were taught that these packaged foods were healthier and they were easier and they made our lives better. And many times it was a white refined food.
But of course, refined means about 97% of the fiber is gone, and enriched means most of the nutrients have been stripped out, but we've sprayed a few synthetic chemicals back on for you, and now we call it enriched.
Our parents, God bless them, they didn't know any better. The information wasn't out there. Meat and potatoes, that's how you live.
This summer, try our new grilled chicken margarita pizza.
Who knew crab goes with everything? Whoever put crab on this salmon?
On a burger. And don't forget the bacon and onions seared inside fresh ground beef.
Introducing Grilled Dogs, flame grilled to perfection and made with 100% beef. Get them now.
only at Burger King.
The standard American diet is not working. It's not good for us.
I think we haven't really focused on the quality of food that we take. We're more interested in convenience.
I mean, the whole fast food thing on television, you know, all the pizza commercials, burger commercials, just fast food that you make at home, stuff you take off the shelf and you pour it out of a box and put some water in it. You got an instant meal here. It's like, oh my God, are we killing ourselves?
Early on in this process, it was kind of confusing because I would read a study that would say this is good for you, and then another one would say, no, that's actually bad for you. Something else is good for you.
So the industry just has to keep the public confused, which they've been doing a very good job at.
I was so misinformed as a young adult that I didn't know how to eat properly and I didn't know how to balance my diet.
I was, eating what I thought was health food, salmon, big hunks of salmon.
I think it can get confusing to the general public because all they hear are sensationalized headlines about, oh, this fat is good for you, this fat is bad for you, you want a high protein diet, stay away from carbohydrates. Well, we don't eat food like that. We eat food.
All that we need is enough confusion. And then people that throw up their hands and I'll forget it, I'll just do whatever I want to do.
Drink your milk for strong bones and teeth, and it turns out to be exactly the wrong way around.
And almost a little betrayed that we'd been told our whole lives that we had to eat, animal protein and drink milk in order to be healthy.
But that's what we grew up with as a culture. So we can't be blamed for it, but we have to break those habit patterns.
Eating to excess.
You've got far too many sausages, Willie. Will you put some back?
There are fresh concerns about our globally expanding waistlines.
Experts had thought the obesity rate had leveled off, and they don't know why it's rising instead. The new report also shows women have a higher level of obesity than men.
The reason people get fat is because they eat fat. From my lips to my hips, the fat you eat is the fat you wear.
There's unfortunately been a lot of articles written recently, mostly by non-physicians and non-scientists, saying, Americans have been told to eat less fat, they're eating less fat, they're fatter than ever, so, if low fat has failed, bring out the bacon and eggs. Well, I went to the U.S. Department of Agriculture database and said, I know that Americans have been told to eat less fat, but what have we actually been eating? Well, it turns out that every decade since 1950, we've been eating more fat, more meat, more sugar, and more calories. So, not surprisingly, we're fatter.
The biggest portion of Americans are in the obese category now. It's unbelievable. And the people, we have a very small minority of people that have a normal weight.
It goes from the spoon right to your hips and belly, and actually it goes there so effortlessly you can take a needle and suck the fat out, take it to the lab, analyze it, and you can tell what people like to eat. You suck their belly fat out and it's full of monounsaturated fats, and they're into olive oil. That's full of trans fats, they're into margarines and shortenings. If they're full of omega-3 fats, then they're into eating fish.
People worry about if they're 10 pounds too heavy, 50 pounds too heavy, but they're not thinking about the impact of the weight as it pertains to their actual health and well-being and their risk for disease.
I want to enjoy my kids, enjoy my grandkids. I cannot imagine missing one thing. Going into this massive change, of course, I'd love to lose weight, but more importantly, I just want to be healthy.
And they say, Doctor, I've tried everything. I'm miserable. I'll go, well, have you tried eating something different? Or tell me what you've done with your nutrition.
I'm changing what I put in my body, but that's what I've known for 36 years, so it's very scary.
Up until recently, we didn't really think of nutrition as being a very strong force. Eat a little bit less carbs and nothing much happens, or you count calories for a few weeks and you lose a few pounds and then you gain it all back. And I think people have gotten used to the idea that food doesn't make much difference.
My family surrounds celebrations, sad things, bad things. Everything revolves around food.
You know, you go to a funeral, and after the funeral, people get together, they eat, and they eat the same kind of things that help put the person in the casket in the first place. So it's really part of who we are.
The thought of giving up sugar, not being able to eat my waffle with syrup and a side of bacon, that is, I mean, that just makes my stomach turn. It's that nervous feeling of like when you are starting a new job or you're going from elementary school to middle school. That's how I feel about changing my food.
Because food is something primal. It's the first bond and love we create after we're being born. And looking into old age, for many of us, it's the last pleasure we're left with on this earth.
I think a lot of people understand fruits and vegetables are good for you, but they don't know how good the good stuff is, and they have no idea how bad the bad stuff is.
I think the addiction to food is bigger than the combination of the addiction that people have to cigarettes, alcohol, coffee, drugs.
I truly see how food can completely control someone's life, that you literally obsess over it. And it's understandable when you get in your car and you drive somewhere, how many fast food places do you go by? How many billboards do you see? You are bombarded all day long and just filled with temptation.
It's like an alcoholic. I can't have one drink. I can't have that one candy bar a week because I didn't have an off switch.
Most of the restaurants have very easily figured out that if you add cheese and butter and salt to everything, it tastes good. And so you come back over and over again. And the same thing is true for a lot of the snack foods and candies. They're just perfectly tweaked to be delicious.
So if we just look at like the average American diet, when we put in sugar, fat, and salt into our body, a couple of things happen. First, it triggers the reward system in our brain, the dopamine reward system, just like nicotine, methamphetamine, and cocaine. So they have the same effect, creating some dependence or food addiction.
Drug addicts often have this thing where they call chasing the dragon. It's the elusive first high. No other high is as good as this first high, and so they're constantly chasing it. And I've experienced that with food. Like, the first bite is so amazing, but the second isn't as amazing, and the third isn't. But I just keep eating it, whether it's the Oreos or the chocolate chip cookies or the ice cream, just trying to get back to that first bliss.
What's sweet out in nature? Sweet potatoes, berries, fruit, healthy foods, right? And so, but now the industry uses that natural, healthy urge against us, right? They're chemists that spend their whole lives, working on the bliss point. The ripest peach in the world is not as sweet as Fruit Loops, right?
Within just a couple of hours of eating these foods, it's absorbed into the bloodstream and then it penetrates our cell. Sugar causes measurable inflammation inside of our artery walls, causing damage to the lining of the artery, the endothelial cells, making us more susceptible to atherosclerosis and even more susceptible to inflammation that can lead to cancer. We also know that within a couple of hours of eating sugar, it suppresses our immune system, and it's specifically the natural killer cells that help us to fight infections. And that can suppress our immune system for 4 to 5 hours. So if we kind of understand this, Americans having sugar-based breakfast, sugar-based lunch, and sugar-based dinner, they're suppressing their immune system throughout the course of the day, making themselves more susceptible to these infections that we encounter.
Realize that we are going to go through a chemical addictive withdrawal for probably 3 or 4 days, depending on the food and the frequency and the quantity at which you ate it.
If you feel a little bit bloated or a little gassy or a lot gassy, or you're going with more frequency, it's not to be concerned about. Let it pass, let your body sort of work itself out.
I know it's tough in the beginning. I know food addictions and I call it toxic hunger can make you feel bad when you're kind of like breaking those addictions. You could feel fatigue, you could feel weak and headachy. You could feel like you're emotionally attached to those foods and having almost a feeling of anxiety giving up the foods you've come to love.
Oh, I can't live without meat. Well, yeah, you can.
I always say go cold turkey, even if it's just for a short period of time. Go cold turkey for 21 days. Because the whole tapering off thing, it doesn't work with addiction. We're addicted to meat, we're addicted to dairy. There are opiates in cheeses and things like that. Plus, we're just addicted to our habit patterns that we grew up with.
Imagine you're back in the 1950s, before the Surgeon General report on smoking came out, and one doctor's telling you to smoke Camels, the other doctor saying, no, smoke Luckies instead. So when 1964, when the Surgeon General report came out, they cited 7,000 studies about the dangers of smoking. 7,000. Now look, 6,000 should have been enough, right? But it had to get to that point before it could tip. And how many people had to die until that happened? And so I think we're in a very similar situation today.
My story starts a long time ago with a lot of issues with overeating, and it escalated many, many times up and down, a lot of yo-yo dieting. Finally, at 380 pounds and diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and hypertension on medication, I decided to make a commitment to a completely different lifestyle of eating. I was in my 49th year, and it occurred to me I wasn't going to see 50. It was a lot of sitting on the couch, watching a lot of television and eating. And everyone didn't always see the eating because I did that after they left for school or before, in the car. There was a lot of secretive eating going on.
You want to believe that there is no addiction, that this is a metabolic thing and that, this can be fixed. But, when you start to find that, the trappings of rappers and...
I knew. I knew what was happening. I knew about all the things that they didn't know about.
You say to yourself, okay, at this time, maybe I'm 40-something years old and, okay, I'm going to have all these kids. I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to have to take care of them if she's not around.
Every day, I thought that they were going to find me dead in the parking lot because I was out of breath just walking from my car to my office every day.
There were a lot of things that I didn't know, I didn't understand. I'm like, oh, if I could just do the math on this, it'll be better, but there is no math to this.
I couldn't do many things, and I didn't do many things because of the shame and embarrassment. I didn't want to embarrass my kids.
People make fun of them, but they don't exist, And they do exist.
I was morbidly obese my entire adult life. Being obese sucks. You know that people are looking at you. You can only imagine what they're thinking about you, even though they're too polite. I was eating what most Americans consider to be a healthy diet with lean protein, so I was pretty much down to chicken and salmon as my protein. But we were cooking those proteins in butter and olive oil, and obviously it was not working. I had tried every fad diet that there was, low carb, South Beach, Atkins, Weight Watchers, to try to lose weight, and I discovered what a lot of people have, which is as long as you're doing these diets, they work great. Problem is, when you stop dieting, all the weight comes back and often more than you were in the first place.
Wisdom is the process of finding out that your intuition is wrong. It's not easy to have to learn something that goes against your instincts. For example, people have the feeling when they're sitting in a car that they're not in danger if they don't have their seatbelt on. That was sort of the way people felt in the 1950s and 60s. So your intuition doesn't understand that you're sitting in a 2-ton vehicle going 50 miles an hour and that you are actually helpless.
I thought I ate super healthy. The truth is that I was completely wrong, but the type of information that I could find available to me said that these foods were actually good for me.
I thought I was healthy because I didn't have meat in my diet, I didn't have milk in my diet, I didn't have eggs, I didn't have cheese, but I was eating all this other junk full of oil and sugar and salt and all of that.
I filled my body with protein and calories. Little did I know what it was doing to my body at that time, but I continued to eat that way all the way up through the '94 Olympics when I was competing, and thought nothing of going to a fast food restaurant and eating 2 hamburgers and a couple orders of fries and a chocolate milkshake. I had the idea that it had no consequences for me to eat this kind of food because I looked and felt great.
Well, I'm thin. I don't really need to think about that. I don't need to think of plant-based. That's for someone who's obese or overweight. But the reality is that it's not so much about the weight, because the weight is really a symptom of what's happening on the inside, and many times that symptom goes unnoticed.
I was just kind of your typical kid. I was on the yearbook. I played volleyball. So we really had no idea that anything was coming or that anything was wrong. When I was 16 years old, I was told that I had 6 months to live. So the first clue that something was actually wrong was one weekend I had gone to the Jersey Shore with my friends. But I remember we went to a diner and I had these pancakes and I could not get the pancakes in my mouth. It hurt so bad. And the next morning I woke up and this excruciating pain that felt like it would take weeks to heal was gone. But the strange thing was that same exact identical pain was in my left shoulder. And after a couple of days, it disappeared from that arm too. Not long after that, migraines started. I had this huge rash across my face, going from one cheek across my nose to the other side. My blood test showed that my kidneys were in trouble, so they sent me in for a kidney biopsy. So next thing I know, I'm going into surgery. So it was just so chaotic. And the doctor told us what happened, and they said, you're in stage 4 kidney failure, and you've got 6 months if we don't do something really, really aggressive. 6 months you'll be in dialysis or you'll be dead. So I was put on high-dose steroids. It was about 7 different pills I had to take every day. And I also was put on experimental chemotherapy to try to save my kidneys. I was told I couldn't have kids. I was told I probably wouldn't live past my 50s. I'd probably be handicapped by my 30s. Well, with lupus, your immune system's attacking your own body. And so my immune system had suddenly stopped recognizing my kidneys as my own and were attacking my kidneys, trying to kill it. I'd also developed blood clots that had happened when I was in medical school. And so I was taking blood thinners because I'd experienced a mini stroke, a transient ischemic attack. And thankfully, I didn't damage my brain, but I was in a lot of danger of dying at that point if I didn't use this blood thinner for the rest of my life. Otherwise, I was trucking through. I was 2 months away from graduating medical school. And then I met this most amazing person, Thomas Tadlock, and he just changed everything for me. And I went from only dreaming about a white coat to dreaming about a white dress. And the hardest thing I ever had to do was to tell him about my illness and the fact that marrying me was, not going to be long term. And it was hard for him to hear. But he just said that he'd rather have a short life with me than a lifetime with someone else. So he would take care of me.
If you need a surgery or if you're in an accident and you need diagnostics, the United States is the place to be. But if you want to prevent chronic disease, we're near the bottom of the list.
We're taught to trust the medical field and take the medicine they prescribe to us.
Really, I grew up thinking that drugs, things like that from the doctor were the normal thing to do and that that's what would cure you.
And unfortunately, the pills aren't the answer, because if they were the answer, we've never had more pills in human history, and yet we've never had more chronic disease.
We need education more than medication, and our doctors are not getting this in medical school. And if they're not, then you're not getting it.
We're very focused on procedures and medications.
Medical school is pharmacology. In fact, we even learned about pharmacology during lunch. We get takeout what are called drug lunches by pharmaceutical reps.
Pharmaceutical industry is like any other industry in America. They're there to make money and produce profits.
They fund medical education. That's what you learn about.
These medications, you don't get them for free. You pay a price for using medications, and they work as a permission slip. They enable people to think because their numbers look better, they're okay, while the underlying pathology advances day after day. So in a sense, they give people a false sense of security that leads them to give them permission to keep eating the same diet that caused the problem to begin with, and the inevitable consequence is their disease gets worse and worse and worse.
But don't take it if you, and it might cause, rectal bleeding and your eye might fall out, and hey, you might even want to kill yourself. It's kind of like, really? But it's gonna make me feel better, but I might want to kill myself. I think I'll feel the way I'm feeling. I'm okay.
Look, big pharma is one of the most profitable industries. The reason they're not researching new antibiotics, things that we need, is because it's taken for 10 days. That's not useful. No, we want drugs you take every single day for the rest of your life, right? And what are those? Those are chronic disease drugs, right? High blood pressure medications, for example, right? You have to take them every day for the rest of your life because they don't treat the underlying cause of the disease.
The pill companies don't make money when you're healthy, they make money when you're sick. There's no profit in health. They need to keep you in that kind of zombie state in between where you're just shoveling more and more meds until you basically tap out. That's how the game works, and that's what's stacked against you.
I'm skeptical about the medical community because I know they're pill pushers. And it's just part of what they do. The pharmaceutical community has their hooks way too deeply in the government and the regulatory system.
Approximately 106,000 people die from drug side effects. And now that's just in hospitals, and that's just 1 year. And these are drugs that are properly prescribed and taken as directed. These are not medical errors. These are not suicide attempts. These are not mistakes. These are drugs that were prescribed exactly right and taken exactly as ordered. And we're killing 106,000 a year. Now that's a lot. That's 1 million people in 10 years.
When you're young, you think you're invincible. You don't think what you're going to eat's going to really hit you down the road. Really didn't start thinking about it much until my dad had a heart attack and then had quadruple bypass. And then, you start thinking, well, uh-oh, he's got a problem, So
today we're going to see Andre with high cholesterol. His cholesterol report shows that his total cholesterol is 189 on medication. With a whole food plant-based diet, we can take that cholesterol level below 150 without medication. And that's going to be one of our goals.
I'm controlling my cholesterol now and my triglycerides with medication, but a lot of the research I've done on the medications I'm on is not very positive, and they have side effects, and I've suffered some of the side effects. If I'm going to be on this for a long time, is there a better way? If I can do it through a dietary means, which would allow me to get off of these drugs completely, that would be the optimal goal. Well, for me to change anything, I'm going to have that proof to where through this diet, it will put my triglycerides in a safe range, my cholesterol in a safe range, and hopefully the cholesterol ratios, good to bad, within an acceptable range. I'm open-minded to see what happens, give it a shot, see if it works. I mean, what you have to lose?
Pythagoras and Socrates was talking about this in Hippocrates 2,500 years ago.
The healthiest cultures on the planet, without exception, were plant-based.
I don't think it's an accident that the information on this has been known and is now just bubbling up.
Then you have to ask the question, why are we so oblivious to all of this? That gets you to questions concerning, obviously, governance.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture, whose mandate is to promote agricultural products. I mean, that's what they do. At the same time, we put them in charge of protecting public safety by meat inspections and, nutrition guidelines.
How the government's telling us what to eat is through what they subsidize. And so that's what people eat, because people eat what's inexpensive.
What foods are subsidized? Well, we're going broke, so shouldn't we be subsidizing healthy food? So are we making apples cheaper? Are we out making kale cheaper? No, the subsidies go to the sugar industry and goes to feed crops, primarily to feed livestock. So you can actually get kind of below cost of production thanks to our tax dollars. We are giving billions of dollars to the livestock industry so you can make dollar menu burgers.
In 2014, I had the privilege to be invited to testify in front of the USDA Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee in Washington, D.C. Out of the 46 speakers invited, 42 represented industry.
First, Americans who consume the recommended amounts of dairy foods are better able to meet key nutrient recommendations, including calcium, vitamin D, and potassium. In fact, it's difficult for most Americans to meet these nutrient recommendations without consuming at least 3 servings of dairy foods daily.
We know quite well that a lot of these policy decisions and political decisions are being made through financial considerations with people with big money, big companies, big CEOs, and big Washington connections.
And so when it comes to eat more messaging, like eat more fruits and vegetables, they come out and say it. But when it comes to eat less messaging, well, then there's a conflict, right? And so what do? They don't actually mention foods, God forbid. They say, eat less saturated and trans fatty acids. Now that's wink, wink, nudge, nudge, code for eat less, meat and dairy, and that's the sources of saturated fat, particularly cheese and chicken in this country. But they can't come out and say, eat less Cheetos. They can't come out and say, eat less meat, eat less dairy. They would get hammered.
Dairy is one of the strongest lobbies as far as food production in this country goes. They have the most money, and they will use it ruthlessly.
There's not an asparagus lobby that I'm aware of
There's no money in telling people to put the burger down and have a broccoli spear.
The USDA had an internal newsletter that promoted Meatless Monday. So once a week, for your health, for the environment, consider, reducing meat consumption. And there was such a political firestorm to that radical proposition that it was retracted within hours. I think that was just a lesson that you can't even go there. Doesn't matter what the science says. Money talks in Washington.
The dogma in the nutrition industry, if you open up the fitness magazines and if you open up the bodybuilding magazines especially, is like you will never succeed unless you eat as much animal products as you possibly can. So I was terrified at first. I was like, okay, I want to be healthy, but I don't know what's going to happen.
That's the first question anyone asks when you tell them that you're a plant-based athlete is like, where do you get your protein?
It's funny that protein is an issue because number one, people don't know what it is. Number two, they don't recognize it in food.
The whole protein thing is such a myth. It's a mainstream propaganda thing by these dairy and animal companies that throw this thing out there, that the amount of protein you need in your body.
Standing in front of you, it's obviously not a hindrance in bodybuilding to eat whole plant foods.
So what's the problem with so much protein? It can damage our kidneys. Some even cancers will grow or exacerbate because of high levels of protein.
And for somebody who's absolutely stuck on protein, that's their big issue. I'm not sure I'm going to get enough. Get in your car, go to the nearest rural area, pick out the biggest bull that you can find. Then go to the nearest racetrack, find the fastest, biggest, most muscular stallion. Go to the zoo, look at the tallest giraffe, the biggest elephant, and all of those animals with rippling muscles are vegans. They are getting all of the protein they need entirely from plant sources, and you will too.
If you go back 10,000 years, you look at old skeletons, fossils, people had no cavities. People had these perfect teeth. You go back and think, well, wait a second, they never brushed a day in their lives. No Listerine, no water pick, no flossing. Yeah, but no candy bars. So before the invention of the candy bar, they're perfect. Wait, you think our bodies would have evolved to have our teeth fall out? Doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, but so cavities are completely preventable through diet. We say, well, wait a second, if they're completely preventable, why do people continue to get cavities? Well, people like dessert that kind of outweighs the cost and discomfort of the dentist chair. And look, that's fine, right? Look, I enjoy the occasional indulgence. I got a good dental plan, right? But what if instead of the plaque on our teeth, we're talking about the atherosclerotic plaque building up inside of our arteries, right? Then what are the consequences for you and your family? Now we're not talking about scraping tartar anymore. Now we're talking literally life or death.
If you had told me the stuff I know now affects my health, I would have thought you were crazy. I was 57. I thought I was too young to have a stroke. When Pam and I got married, I weighed 140. As I got older, that increased about, 10 pounds a year or so. When I had my stroke, I was at 240, almost 250.
He didn't know how to do anything. He didn't know me as his wife.
According to my wife, I had the mentality of about a 3-year-old.
Even to go to take a shower or a bath, he wasn't sure what to do. He'd just go in there and he'd stand.
When I had my stroke, they diagnosed that I had diabetes, and I was untreated for approximately 10 years. Pretty soon the doctor sat me down. He tore off my chart after my stress test was going on, and he says, "Do you see anything wrong with that?" And he handed it to the doctor.
When that was done, they came out and said, "We need to do immediate surgery."
I was pretty high risk because I'd had a stroke. The way I looked at it, if I didn't have the surgery, I was going to die anyhow.
He came through the heart surgery. He did good. But he still never got any better.
I had a stroke. I had to live with that. I was diabetic. I had to live with that. And I had a basket of pills. I had to live with that.
Every 34 seconds, someone in the United States has a heart attack. And in case you haven't heard, 1 in 3 women will die of heart disease.
I didn't go into medicine to help people get a little bit better here, a little bit better there. I really wanted transformational change, and I was becoming disillusioned.
It's the whole mindset of our medical culture.
We're taught as medical students and physicians to treat the bad outcomes of our horrific health habits.
I used to work every Christmas and Easter. 6 to 8 hours after that big holiday meal, we would see the strokes, we would see the heart attacks. It was just amazing. Nobody put these things together and says, dear Lord, people are eating themselves to death.
My blood sugar was 441. I had 5 blockages. 2 of them were 100%, 2 was 80, and 1 was 70%. I was on 13 pills a day and 2 shots. I had 7 stents in my original right coronary artery. They just kind of dismissed that it was anything to do with food, that it was more family genetics, that I had a double whammy because I was diabetic.
Since the days of Hippocrates, there's almost been a basic covenant of trust between the caregiver and the patient that wherever possible, the caregiver is going to share with the patient what is the causation of the illness. And today in cardiology, generally that's just not being done at all. Not at all.
We cut people open, we bypass their clogged arteries, you tell them they were cured, and more often than not, they would go home and do all the things that had caused the problem in the first place. You know, smoke and eat junk food. And more often than not, the bypasses would clog up and we'd cut them open again, sometimes 2 or 3 times. And so for me, we were literally bypassing the problem. We weren't really treating the underlying cause.
If you had a nail stuck in the bottom of your shoe, and every time you step down, it hurts your foot because that nail's poking your foot, I could give you some Tylenol or Advil and say, well, just keep going on. Or I could say, I believe we found the cause. Let's remove that nail from your shoe and you don't need any medication. That's the way it is with a whole food plant-based diet.
As a youngster, my own family had a lot of health issues. And as a kid, I remember my 2 favorite uncles having to have bypass surgery. And these were people who I loved. And they were never the same after the surgery. And then one day, I started waking up with the most severe pains in the morning. I just knew something was really bad, but I kept thinking, maybe it'll just go away. You know, I just wanted to believe anything, but oh my goodness, I've got some heart issues. I went to the Cleveland Clinic. I had 100% on my right artery blocked and 2 at 65%. I had a hardening of the right side of the artery. I also had left bundle block. I had an enlarged heart, I had leaky valves. I was a real mess.
Even though we tend to think of advances in medicine as being a new drug or a new laser or something really high-tech and expensive, in our studies over the last almost 40 years now, we've used these very high-tech, expensive, state-of-the-art scientific measures to prove how powerful these very simple and low-tech and low-cost interventions can be. And we found for the first time that not only can you help prevent disease, but you can actually reverse it in most cases.
What Ornish showed, 1990, in the most prestigious medical journal in the world, he could measure and show that the arteries were opening up without drugs, without surgery, just, plant-based diet and other healthy lifestyle changes. After that publication, no one else should have died of heart disease. We had the cure, we've had it for decades, yet hundreds of thousands of people continue to die from this preventable, treatable, reversible disease.
The catheter is again in the aorta, now in the left main, and injecting dye into the left main. And if you look very closely, I'll slow it down, you can see there's a significant narrowing of the vessel right here. See, this is a normal vessel here. This is a circumflex vessel, and if you look right here, it's very hazy, and so that's a cholesterol plaque that is limiting the flow significantly down this vessel. So the patient comes in with a heart attack or comes in with chest pain.
Most of what I do are coronary bypass grafts. Oklahoma is #2 in the nation for death from cardiovascular disease, and it's because of the way we eat. There's no question about it.
About 6 years ago, I woke up with left arm pain. I went to my cardiologist. My cholesterol was 494. My triglycerides were over 3,200. I had a stress test. It was abnormal. I had a 85% blockage of my left anterior descending, an 80% a little further downstream, and a 70% of my right main coronary And he said that it was too big to stent, so he recommended I have a triple bypass.
It was like a slap in the face because it just never crossed my mind that that would happen. So many of our friends had this happen, and they went in and they had the stents and they were fine, and that was what we were gonna do, So it was a real wake-up call.
One of my partners recommended that I read the China study. I had read that the Saturday before the arteriogram, and in that book is mentioned Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease by Dr. Esselstyn. And so I found that book, read it literally that day, called my cardiologist and said, I think I want to try diet before I have bypass. And it literally scared him to death.
Don't let your culture hold your heart hostage.
Hey, it's in the family genes. I'm going to get it. I'm going to die of something. Why not let me eat what I want to eat and enjoy life? I hear that all the time.
It's very common for people who have a family history of heart disease to have a family history of eating a very poor, low nutritive quality diet, high in junk food, high in salt, sugar, and fat.
One of my sites that I work at is a heart hospital. I see patients that come in there not infrequently who are about my age, built like me, that come in with heart attacks. They're thin and healthy on the outside, but on the inside, their arteries are filled up with saturated fat and cholesterol and inflammation. They're very surprised by it when it happens, but I see how my friends eat after a bike ride, for instance.
Exercise is great for many different reasons, but exercise alone is not enough. And a plant-based lifestyle is incredibly beneficial because it reduces the risk of so many diseases that affect us.
The whole truth will come out one of these days. Truth cannot be suppressed for too long.
Erectile dysfunction to a urologist is ED, but when a cardiologist hears ED, that's early death.
Erectile dysfunction is sort of the bad boy on the block because nobody wants to talk about it. But in general, the statistics are pretty earth-shattering, right? Roughly 40% of men at age 40, 50 at 50, 60 at 60, and then by the time we're 100, we're all in trouble.
The problem is when a person develops ED, that's the first sign that there's some problem in the blood vessels.
The pathophysiology is the same as coronary artery disease, the obstruction of the arteries to the penis by plaques that develop in there. They're much smaller arteries going to the penis than to your heart, and that's why we typically see those symptoms develop first.
Most people don't realize that cardiovascular disease is a systemic disease process. That means if you have a heart attack, you're at risk for ED and peripheral arterial disease and stroke and dementia. And so in short, people need to realize that when they have a stent and they fix one little area, it does not cure the problem. It simply solves one little spot. And so ED is no different.
It's kind of a warning signal that, well, that's not working well. And if that's not working well, we know you're not getting the oxygen supply to your brain and to your heart.
Where cardiovascular disease has its inception is when we progressively destroy the capacity of our life jacket and our guardian, which is the innermost layer of the artery, the endothelium.
The damage to the endothelium begins when an excess LDL cholesterol is absorbed into the artery walls. The resulting inflammatory response triggers immune cells called macrophages. They enter the vessel wall and begin to gobble up the excess cholesterol, creating these foam cells. Now, these large cholesterol-laden foam cells accumulate, resulting in plaque buildup from the inside out, causing a pimple-like area to bulge into our artery passageways. Over time, the covering of these pimples can rupture, triggering a blood clot that can block normal blood flow to an area, resulting in a heart attack or a stroke.
Back in 1900, we consumed about 4 pounds of oil per person per year. Currently, 74 pounds. So we have added a tremendous amount of oil to our lives.
All oil is 120 calories a tablespoon. And most Americans consuming between 250 and 700 calories of oil a day.
You're taking the oil, removing it from the original item, whether it be an olive, whether it be a soybean, whether it be coconut, and you're isolating that oil out. When you isolate that oil, you have 100% fat.
Fats and oils are a major contributor to blocked heart arteries, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart attacks, heart failure.
Oil injures endothelial cells. Olive oil, corn oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, sunflower, coconut oil, palm oil, oil in a cracker, oil in bread, oil in a salad dressing.
So I have a number of people, even on a plant-based diet, that will come in and say, Dr. Stoll, I'm eating really well, but I'm still gaining weight. And my first question to them is, well, how much olive oil, coconut oil, etc. are you using in your diet? When they start to add it up, sometimes they're adding 5-6 tablespoons a day. So here we are, 600-700 calories they're adding to their diets, and they don't realize it because they're adding in oils that they assume are healthy.
There aren't some special oils you can buy that are health promoting. They're all processed foods with almost no levels of micronutrients and phytochemicals in them, with no fiber.
Coconut oil is 90% saturated fat. Lard is 43% saturated fat.
The coconut oil miracle is that it's still on the market.
And so when we just hear little clips on the news, maybe on the internet, says olive oil's the way to go, we grab onto that. And unfortunately, it's bad information.
Here I am, I'm just out of recovery from the heart catheter. And he looks at me, he says, I think I'd like you to meet Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. He was my mentor at medical school. Sure enough, the next morning he gave me a call. He said, I want you to read this book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, and call me back.
There is hard science out there that you can halt and reverse this disease with nutrition. There's a common feeling that, patients won't do that. Well, nothing is further from the truth.
I read it, and within a few days I called him back, and I said, I'm in. I'll do whatever you want me to do.
When folks are willing to change their, 50, 60, 70-year-olds worth of habits, it's amazing watching Cure for the first time in my career.
I really believe that diet is the primary way that we need to change things.
I've been now plant-based for almost 3 years. What it's done is, at that time, my cholesterol was 310. Today it's at 143. Plant-based nutrition has allowed me to have more energy than I've ever felt in my life.
The body is a natural self-healing machine, and disease is unnatural, avoidable, and in most cases reversible with superior nutrition.
What I thought I knew about healthy eating almost killed me. One moment, I was eating meat with every meal. The next moment, whole food, plant-based, a very drastic change overnight. Within 6 months, my cholesterol was down to 115. My LDL was 15, which was as low as they could measure. My triglycerides had fallen to 175. The last time I had my cholesterol checked, it was 96, and my triglycerides were 97. And there's not a drug on the planet that can do that. That is solely through diet. And I'm just utterly amazed that the human body has the ability to heal itself so quickly. I've used my body for 53 years. I'm currently 59, and I feel better now than I felt when I was 35.
Genetics is not our destiny. Our genes can be directly affected by the food we eat.
We know that you can reverse heart disease with a plant-based diet. We know this. You cannot do it with medication, but you can do it with plant-based diet. And when they ask doctors, why don't you teach people this? They say they don't think people are going to want to do it. It's too difficult. Well, let them be the judge of that. I think it's too difficult to go under the knife and have my chest cracked open, but give people the chance, the opportunity.
2 weeks after starting the whole food plant-based diet with no oil, my angina had all of a sudden stopped. By the time I went back to my internist, my hemoglobin A1C was coming down, so they took me off the shots. They took me off of the Starlix pills. Within a couple months later, I went off the metformin. The doctor said, I don't think you're diabetic. I don't have any arthritis anymore. I'm enjoying life. I love the food that I'm eating. I would say the bottom line to all my health issues is you don't have to suffer with heart disease and diabetes because it's foodborne illnesses. And if food is what got you into this mess, food can get you out of it.
By definition, a mammal makes milk for its young. And so a horse makes milk perfect for its foal, and a human being makes milk perfect for the infant. And a cow makes milk perfect for a calf. The thing is that we have different nutritional needs when we're young than a calf has. They grow real fast. A little baby calf grows from 60 pounds to 600 pounds drinking milk. If you fed a baby calf human milk, the animal starved to death. So when people eat baby calf food designed for that accelerated growth, they grow. People get fat.
We know the protein from dairy casein is a cancer promoter on the DNA level. It actually tells your DNA, go ahead and make some cancer.
The earlier you introduce young children to dairy, the higher their risk, about 14-fold higher, to develop a devastating disease called diabetes type 1, which is an autoimmune disease that destroys the pancreas irreversibly.
Dairy calcium has kind of been made into a myth that if I eat cheese or I drink milk and have a good calcium intake from dairy, that I'll have strong bones, and that's actually not been proven in the literature at all.
When I look at people and they're drinking all this milk to try to combat the osteopenia and osteoporosis, I tell them that the countries that consume the most dairy have the weakest bones. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, most of Asia didn't have osteoporosis up until recent times, and they didn't drink milk at all.
If you don't drink milk, where are you going to get your calcium? Where do you think the cow gets their calcium, right? They have a 1,000-pound skeleton. That's a lot of... They get it from plants, right?
Start every day with Milk's Protein and Milk Life.
The dairy industry says, oh, milk does the body good. We're believing advertising. We're not believing truths.
In 1999, I had that wake-up call. I was diagnosed with both breast and cervical cancer. So the doctor said, you've got to have a mastectomy next week. You got to have a hysterectomy immediately. You got to have chemo. You got to have radiation. And I was like a deer in headlights, and I was like, there's no way.
All of the doctors were pretty clear that they felt that I probably wouldn't live longer than a few months because I had cancerous fluid that had metastasized from my ovaries all the way up to the pleural cavity on my right lung.
Until you've seen a loved one get sick and die in a hospital, or walk through the halls, or been to an intensive care unit, people don't know. I mean, you drown to death when you die of lung cancer. I mean, horrific, horrific deaths.
The war on cancer under President Nixon started in 1971. The incidence rate, that is the number of people that get cancer, was 1 in 8. The survival rate was about 27, 28%, which means a little more than 70% of the patients died. Just a couple of years ago, the National Cancer Institute published their latest figures. The incidence is much higher, and the survival rates are basically unchanged, around 31, 32%.
It's a travesty that people continue to suffer and die when we have the tools, we have the knowledge, the system is such, it just doesn't reward that kind of behavior. It doesn't make anybody money.
I think that the assumption there is that there's a rational, helpful, benign process that's running the show in government, and there isn't. So what's running the show is a vicious free-for-all, and that nobody's really interested in helping Americans get healthy.
Nobody makes any money sending you home to eat your vegetables and drink your water. And I think that's probably the base root of the whole problem.
In our morning rounds, how where you live affects your odds of surviving cancer. New government data shows people in the South have the highest risk of dying from cancer. Kentucky ranks #1.
Cancer, as defined by modern medicine, is essentially a wild, erratic cell that's growing without control. And it's very active metabolically.
First up, chemotherapy is standard for most breast cancer patients.
I think the whole chemotherapy industry is very sad. It's based on an assumption that I find to be flawed. The way that cancer is assumed to work is once started, progressively gets worse because of certain events that come along, like mutations. Therefore, that leads to the idea, well, how do we treat people with cancer? If we can't get those cancer cells to go back and being normal, what are we going to do? We're going to kill them. And how best to kill them except to create some chemical that can zap those tumors. That's called chemotherapy. And chemotherapy is not working for the most part.
The focus on cancer seems to be early detection. And we have Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I would like to see Breast Cancer Prevention Month. And that could be for all types of cancer, not just breast cancer.
My mom and aunts had breast, cervical, uterine, or ovarian cancer. They did the surgery, the mastectomies and the hysterectomies. They did the chemo, they did the radiation, and I really saw what that did. I saw that not only did it not heal, but it made the situation worse. And I was convinced that many of the people that I loved the most in the world had actually died, not as a result of being diagnosed with cancer, but as a result of all of those treatments.
Why do chemo, surgery, and radiation not do well for the most part? Because they do nothing to change the root cause. The biological terrain, the culture medium, if you will, that any disease will grow in is not functioning properly. It's conducive to growing a cancer cell, for example. Conventional medicine looks at the tumor and says, okay, that's the disease. I don't. I look at the tumor and say, that's a symptom of the disease.
In our research, for example, we showed 40 years ago, we could have a model and we could turn cancer on and off, and it doesn't have anything to do with the mutations.
I went to see Dr. Joel Furman, who, to my good fortune, was my primary care physician. And he examined me and we talked, and I just decided, well, it's not going to hurt to ask another person, you know, if there's a chance that I'm going to get through this. And I said, do you think I'm going to survive this? And he said, yes, I do. And I said, that's wonderful, because you're the only one who has said that.
You don't have to be sick. You don't have to wait in line for a terminal illness. There's something you can do about it, and the time to start is now.
The motivating factor for me to adopt a whole food plant-based diet was I didn't want to die. My wife had adopted whole food plant-based ideology for at least 2 to 3 years.
And I did it really purely as for health. I had dragged the family along fairly successfully. My husband was good when he was at home and I was cooking for him.
We hear the term always committing to something 100%. And I think for me, adopting a whole food plant-based diet, I wasn't fully committed.
He was diagnosed in November of 2013 with kidney cancer. Turned out to be stage 4 cancer. I think at that moment, I never had to nag at him again. I never had to convince him. He was completely on board.
We were told that given what it was and the type of cancer, renal cell carcinoma, and a fairly aggressive one as to what they were seeing on the tests taken, that would probably be a matter of months that I had to live.
He went through a major surgery to have the kidney removed and many of the lymph nodes around it. And, you know, they were pretty brutal, and they said that, you know, that he might not even survive the surgery because it had gone up his vena cava and they had to clamp that off and he could bleed out. And so that was devastating in itself.
And they explained that chemotherapy and radiation was not effective in controlling or healing or working with renal cell carcinoma. And they said there was current research being done with respect to immune therapy drugs.
He recovered really well from the surgery rather quickly. He was accepted into a trial study, and it was an immune-boosting therapy, and we went down to Vancouver for that. And after the 3rd treatment, it attacked his liver.
So they explained to us that this liver attack, the side effect from the drugs, and the rates that my liver was battling right now could be a fatal episode.
So he was dismissed from the study because it doesn't look good to kill your trial patients, so they basically sent us home to recover from that.
There's no way. I'm not gonna do surgery, chemo or radiation. He said to me, what do you mean, no? You don't have a choice. He said, you'll be dead in 6 months. I said, well, I'll tell you what. If I'm not dead in 6 months, I'll come back to see you.
Conventional medicine uses the term of 5 years survival of a cancer without a recurrence of the same cancer. You might have another one, but without a recurrence of the same cancer is considered a cure. For me, it really isn't. For me, a cure is when the patient lives the rest of their life, as long as they don't mess up and start doing the bad lifestyle choices that they had.
We did a nationwide survey of a total of 6,500 families. And what came out of that was supporting what we had done initially. And that was the moment in that process we turn away from vegetables and fruits and grains which we learned had to be the whole form, the intact kind of form, and we put in all the animal foods and all the processed foods, we're making a big mistake. Animal protein can turn on cancer. And the protein that we were using primarily was the main protein of cow's milk.
When you are eating super inflammatory foods, you're eating dairy products, you're eating meat, you're eating eggs, you're eating all these inflammatory foods, processed foods, all these oils you shouldn't be eating, and then you add to that pesticides and all these chemicals that we know can potentially cause cancer, now you're in the perfect storm.
So I continued on with our whole food plant-based diet, and he just got better and better. And with each scan, things were reducing, lymph nodes were shrinking in size. And initially they had said it would be naive to think that this would not spread. And it didn't spread, and it reduced. And it kept reducing to the point where it was radiologically undetectable.
At this 2-year period where you're told plain and simple that you're probably going to die if you make that outset date. You're probably going to get sicker and sicker. And I didn't. And I got healthier and healthier and healthier.
And at 2 years, when he should have died, according to them, he went back to work, full time.
I've never been this healthy in my whole life. And I'm carrying on. What has brought me here this far, this healthy and the way I am, has been adopting whole food plant-based. There's no two ways about it.
My friends and family didn't believe me. They didn't approve. My doctor didn't like it. But when that 6-month mark came, I made that phone call. I want an appointment. When they ran all the tests, and I was completely cancer-free, some of the things that I found from those tests he ran, not only did I not have cancer, but rheumatoid arthritis that I was diagnosed at the age of 27 with, that the doctors had told me then, you could be crippled by this. You could end up in a wheelchair. You're going to have to take drugs for pain management on this. It was gone. I had always had these problems with eczema, psoriasis. My skin looked better than ever. And from a little girl, I was diagnosed with all kinds of allergies. For the first time in my life that I could remember, I had no allergy. Like, this is really something. I realized that this lifestyle had healed my body completely from the inside out.
I'm Pamela Swallow. I just turned 70 this summer, but I've been 18 years cancer-free. I was diagnosed in 1997 with metastatic stage 4 ovarian cancer. My prognosis was horrible, but not everybody's right all the time, and I was determined to live, and I have, and so could you.
I have a major blockage in my right thigh. I have a lot of plaque in, I guess, a major artery. I was trying to find solutions. When I was shooting Captain America in Cleveland, I was going to the Cleveland Clinic, and while I was there, the doctor asked me about the blockage, and then she started telling me about this doctor that could possibly help me, and we went to have lunch with Essie and Ann. They're just such enthusiastic and healthy people. I'd already read his book. I was convinced that I need to try this, and I decided I was gonna jump right in. I was a little daunted by no oil, no dairy, no nuts, no sugar, the no's. But I got to it and I started it. I was getting along fine with the diet. I was doing great. In the middle of all this, the movie that I was preparing to do in the spring, the director wanted to see me because he heard I was back in town. He wanted to talk to me about the film. When I left, I got a call later on that evening from my agent. It was like, the director was very concerned about you. They said if you don't gain like 20 pounds between now and the time that movie starts, they're gonna fire you. So, contrary to my health needs, I went back to flesh and not just plant-based diet. I gained the weight back like wham. It just came right back just the way I lost it. My leg cramps came back. I started to snore again. I don't pop up out of bed as energetically as I used to. My regularity changed. My susceptibility for catching things changed. drastically. I get tired after I eat. It's just really trippy, you know. It's like, is food supposed to give you energy? I eat now, and it's kind of like, I get a nap. You know, it's like, so my digestive process is very different. I know that at some point I'm going to go back to it because I know how to do it, and I know how I felt when I was doing it, mainly because I know I could do better for myself.
And everything that I was ever taught, everything I'd ever read, basically was telling me, hey, Hispanics have a high percentage of diabetes. I was also led to believe it's in your genes, it's just part of who you are. I was a fast food junkie. My body was telling me, you need that sugar, you need that fat, you need that salt. And so I was going through the drive-thru all the time. My family has been devastated by chronic disease. My mother was diabetic. She had a kidney transplant. She was legally blind. Many years of dialysis, many years of shots, injections, and pills, and ultimately passed away at the young age of 61 years old. My oldest brother, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He passed in 2002. My twin brother Joe, he's been diabetic over a decade, and just about 4 months ago, he had a heart attack. And then the youngest brother is Martin. He was diagnosed with diabetes at a young age, in his early teens, 13 or 14 years old. He has had his right leg amputated. He has had a kidney and pancreas transplant. He's legally blind. He does dialysis 3 times a week, and he takes 25 medications every single day. And I was headed down that same path at the age of 43, taking 2 insulin shots, 2 oral medications for diabetes, a high blood pressure medication, as well as a high cholesterol medication. I even asked my doctor, I said, will I ever get off this insulin? And he flat out told me, no, you're going to be on insulin the rest of your life. I was very upset. I was actually quite pissed off because I'd seen what this had done to my family, and now here I was.
Up until fairly recently, people had a completely wrong view of diabetes. They thought diabetes is caused by eating sugar or eating starch and eating bread. And that was somewhat logical because the carbohydrate in the bread does release glucose, it releases sugar. And so it will make your blood sugar rise. But it turns out that was never the cause of it. Type 2 diabetes is caused by the buildup of tiny microscopic fat particles in the muscle cells. And what happens is, as the fat builds up in the cell, the insulin can no longer bring the glucose inside. So what's the answer? The answer is get that fat out of the cells, the diabetes will improve.
Most of us have no idea where our food comes from.
I started to question where that food was coming from and how that food was raised.
I never made the connection really between what was on my plate and then that was once a living, breathing animal. Once I made that connection, I didn't want to have any part of it.
I don't see animals as food anymore. I see it as complete suffering. And I want people to know that that animal didn't just naturally die and then they package it and it becomes food. That's not how it is. The animal suffered every day of its life. It was beaten, it was tortured, and then it became food for you.
The plight of farm animals is more than ever something that really matters to me. But what also surprised me was how many basic human rights violations exist with the humans in addition to what's happening to the animals.
A lot of milk that we drink actually has a lot of pus or white blood cells in it, largely because a lot of these animals are not treated as well as they ought to be.
You don't have to take a life in order to sustain yours.
Every time we're purchasing something, we're voting with our dollar. So if you choose to eat animal products and you choose to take your dollar and vote for cruelty and harmfulness and death, you're part of the problem then. You're not part of the solution.
I knew right then and there that I didn't want to be part of anything that promoted cruelty.
Informing the public to the truth about what humans are supposed to eat is going to be vital for the future of our health, the future of the environment, the future of animal welfare, and the future of the finances of this country.
Sustainability is becoming more and more an issue. So it's not just the health of people, not just cruelty to animals and whatnot. It's actually an issue of survival.
People are not making the connection that what they're eating is really affecting the environment.
Over a third of the landmass in the world is taken up by livestock agriculture.
If you look at all of the animals that are being raised for consumption, it totals around 70 billion.
Livestock are basically black boxes of inefficiency, right? You pour in huge amounts of feed, of protein, of energy, water, and these animals have the audacity to breathe and move around and waste energy and live their lives. And then only about half of them you can eat, the rest is a skeleton and skin. I mean, it's just like huge amount of resources to get these tiny kind of scraps from them when we could just be eating the food direct, cut out the middle moo.
We're having a big water shortage in California now. They're rationing water. Long showers, 40 gallons of water. Short showers, 20 gallons. One burger is 4,000 to 18,000 gallons of water to make a third of a pound burger.
75% of the deforestation taking place in the Amazon is because of animal agriculture.
We're raping the land, is really what we are doing. We are taking everything out of the dirt that we want to have in the dirt, the microbes, the organic matter. We are headed towards our dirt not being viable to grow anything.
Most people don't understand that the biggest contributor to greenhouse gases, more than all transportation combined, planes, trains, boats, automobiles, is animal agriculture.
We need to do something right now to start reversing global warming.
Well, I can do something about that right now. I can just stop eating animals.
So when you start thinking of world hunger and you start thinking about all the water that's being wasted and transportation, not to mention the cruelty, you start looking at it from a bigger picture and realizing that your dollar that you're voting with doesn't just affect you, it affects not only your fellow human beings, but also your planet.
So when you start to educate yourself, not just about the way that you feel and about the way the people around you feel, but when you really start to take it all in and you've just started to lean in, oh, you're in all the way.
The formula is clear. You want to eat the foods that promote good health. You want to avoid the foods that contribute to poor health.
Basically, we don't eat anything with a mother or a face. Like most people, I kind of walked away from there going, well, what do you eat,
So what is whole food plant-based?
It's a food that comes from the ground. It's less altered by man. It's less processed by man.
Like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans. And nuts and seeds to a lesser extent.
We're not talking about unhealthy plant-based eating. We're talking about whole foods.
I take away all their meat and all their dairy and all their oil, and they look at me and go, Dr. McDougall, I got nothing to eat. There's nothing for me to eat at all. Nothing. And I say, yes, there is. And then I show them the key, which you have to know, or you will fail. I show them the starch. I say, well, do you like potatoes? Oh, I love potatoes.
Beans and lentils and vegetables you didn't even know existed, and even fruits from other countries.
Turnip, collard, mustard, kale.
Greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds.
Black beans, brown rice, salsa, avocados, quinoa.
Bok choy, Swiss chard, kale, collards, collard green, beet greens, mustard green, turnip greens, Napa cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, cilantro, parsley, spinach, and arugula, and asparagus. You got it.
Always eat too much. Stuff yourself on those berries. They feel good. They feel good in you. They give you energy. You don't have to drink anything. They get so much liquid in them, they feel great. That's one food I love. Spinach or collard greens. You ever think you'd ever say collard greens? I say collard greens. Mustard greens. Where's Jeb? Where's Granny? All of a sudden, Ellie Mae Clampett. You start saying things like the Clampetts when you eat like this, I'll have some mustard greens, some collard greens. 3 pounds of those, steamed, and then like this much apple cider vinegar.
The first thing people say is, I don't have time. When somebody says to me, I don't have time, what I really hear is, I don't want to. If tomorrow I'm going to be diagnosed with cancer, I don't have time for that. But I will have time to do chemo, radiation, surgery, recuperation.
The hardest part about changing your diet and your health is just deciding to do it.
Oh, plant-based diet, I don't think I'd like that. Well, you think that long enough, you probably won't try it. Don't you remember when you were little and Mom put something on your plate and said, well, just try it? No, I don't want to try it. Well, just try it.
It's like riding a bike. You like the idea, you want the outcome. You can read about the technique all day long, but at some point, you've just got to get on the bike and find your balance. And once you find your balance, you just glide. and it's so freeing.
So I started, and I started very seriously. I started every meal, 3 meals a day, which consisted mainly of fruits and vegetables, some nuts and seeds, and it worked. And in about 6 months, I lost 120 pounds. And then over the course of maybe another 6 months, I lost another 100 pounds, so I lost 220 pounds. The diabetes went away within weeks, and the hypertension also went away. I started to feel great.
She's got so much energy today, I can't really keep up with it, to be honest with you.
Recently, I was lucky enough to have an echo done by my coworkers, and she was overwhelmed by what she saw on my echocardiogram. There were no blockages, there's no plaque. The elasticity in my heart is excellent. And she said, we don't really see hearts like this. The number one thing that she said was, Susan, I'm convinced. I see what you eat every day, but this, for me, as a echocardiogram sonographer, this is what sells me. I have reversed disease. The damage that hypertension does to your heart and type 2 diabetes, it was reversed in the last 5 years from eating this way.
The first thing I noticed was that I didn't have all those greasy dishes. And then I noticed that my food bill was lower. And then I noticed that I felt better. After all, if you have all those greasy dishes, think what the inside of your intestine must look like.
The vast majority of the world subsists on rice and beans for fractions of what we pay for food.
The thing people have to understand is that it is not expensive to eat a healthy, whole food, plant-based diet. Sure, if you go out to restaurants or buy vegan processed food, it is. But where I live, in the ethnic markets in the area in Los Angeles, a pound of beans are 49 cents. And you get it, cook it in your pressure cooker, you're done in 10 minutes.
For me, I'm not buying meat anymore. I'm not buying dairy anymore. When in season, I can go to my local farmer's market.
And when I explain to them, they ask for how can I do this really? And I say, well, you can actually buy a 25-pound bag of brown rice for $25. You can buy a 20-pound bag of whatever your favorite bean is for $20, and a bunch of fresh frozen vegetables for 99 cents a bag. And you have meals for a month for 2 people for $60, $70. And they look at me like, oh, I never thought of that.
You're not eating the cheeses and the meats and the eggs, and so the average family is going to save a lot of money. Plus, you're not going to be in the line at the pharmacy counter as much. And if diet changes can start to cut that down, you're saving serious money.
We went in and ransacked our pantries, our refrigerators, our freezers, start emptying things out, taking out all the things with the oils, the sugars, the processed foods, got rid of the meats.
From one day to the other, our lifestyle changed completely. We threw away everything we had, and we went to the store and bought new food, and we started.
By the time we got from the TV room into the kitchen, he said we shouldn't have any more animal products in our house. I was like, yay!
We just switched like that, and
Yeah.
and then there was a moment where we said, well, what about the children? I said, it's not a democracy. They're just along for the ride.
I want to feel better. Looking back at where I was just 11 months ago, I don't even recognize that person. I could not imagine the drastic changes that we've seen in less than a year. Not only the physical changes of the weight loss, but coming off medication, I feel good on the inside. I don't hurt anymore. My knees don't hurt. I feel better now than I did when I was in high school. Making this lifestyle change to a whole food, plant-based way of eating is the absolute best decision I've ever made in my life.
It's not so much about trying to invent a new way of life, but rather discovering the foods that are right here in front of you. So it's about shopping in the produce department.
It's literally about knowing which aisles to walk down in your supermarket, which stuff to grab, and which stuff to just keep walking right past.
The first priority is to eat whole, unrefined plants and to avoid animal-sourced foods and foods that are processed.
A fresh roasted beet. Oh. I get really excited about produce.
The foods that don't require a label tend to be the highest in nutrients and most beneficial for your health. Things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, lentils.
However, there are a lot of foods that do have labels. I'm talking about your frozen pizza that's got a dozen ingredients in the crust and a dozen more in the toppings.
My God, there are paragraphs of ingredients. You don't want that. Especially you don't want the mono and diglycerides, you don't want the added oil, and there are usually 4 or 5 or 6 different ways that they're stuffing sugar at you.
For example, we'll pick up Raisin Bran, and I'll show folks, okay, tell me how much sugar is in that per serving and how much fiber is in that per serving. They very quickly realize that often they may be eating for breakfast something that is a bowl full of sugar.
You can pick up a jar of spaghetti sauce, and it'll have sugar in it.
Now, that being said, there are plenty of packaged foods that can be a part of a healthy diet. For example, canned vegetables, frozen fruits and vegetables. However, the way they're packaged matters a great deal, and the way they're processed matters. So in teaching people about label reading, I tell them if it has a package, turn it over and look at the label.
So let's take a look at this one because it looks really promising. It says 100% whole grain. It also says heart healthy and a good source of fiber. So let's take a look at the ingredients just to make sure. Whole wheat flour, water, sugar. Sugar's the 3rd ingredient. It's also got soybean oil in it and those mono and diglycerides that we don't want. So again, it's so important to read those labels.
With nothing to lose, we decided to just try it out and see how things went. And so we decided to do it for a month, and the pounds just started to fall away. I think I lost 14 pounds that first month. So over the course of the next 18 months, I proceeded to lose half of my body weight for a total of about 130 pounds. It's never too late to feel young, to lose weight, to feel energetic, to enjoy your family, your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and be able to help heal yourself with food.
I am so satisfied. I love my food.
I eat so many different things now, and I try new things. Like, I never would have tried Indian or Ethiopian or Thai, and they're my favorite, and I would have missed those had I not become plant-based.
With plant-based cuisine, we can create all the flavors, textures, satisfying feelings that you always want from a meal.
Let's demystify this notion that if you are a plant-based eater, you are giving up everything. If food tastes good, regardless of what it's made of.
Hi, good morning. Hey, Doc. Good to see you. Welcome back. Hi, how are you, Yvonne?
Good.
When I first heard about this, I thought it was a bunch of malarkey, And then a challenge was made, try it. What does it hurt? So I tried it.
Without medication, your cholesterol was 300 range.
Yes, previously.
Okay. And now, without medications and making some changes in your diet, your cholesterol is 171.
Really?
Yeah. So it's almost half of what it was before on no medication. Your triglycerides have dropped another 20 points. Both your cholesterol and your triglycerides are safely in the normal range. Sweet. On no medication.
That is proof to me. You can't lie in the numbers, and you can't lie with shedding the weight. And I felt great. So we kept on going with it, and it's working. I was told and I was convinced by my doctor, you're going to be on this for the rest of your life because you're just genetically predisposed to be this way. And it took this to prove to me that's not true. I'm eating plant-based, whole foods, and my cholesterol is no longer an issue. I feel as good as I did when I was 20.
A lot of people think that when they go plant-based, it's going to be really difficult and the cooking's going to be really involved and involve 15 to 20 ingredients, but it's not. One of my favorite things to make is my garlic Alfredo sauce. It's just 7 ingredients. Basically just start out with chopping some onions, chopping some garlic, throw it in a little bit of vegetable broth on a pan, saute it for about 8 minutes until all the broth is evaporated, and then you just add it to your blender, and you're going to want to add the cooked vegetables, the remaining broth, which is another cup, I have a half a cup of cashews. Now, if you don't have a high-powered blender, you're gonna have to soak your cashews for about 5 to 6 hours. Otherwise, they're gonna turn out gritty, and you don't want that in your sauce. You're gonna want it thick and creamy and smooth. A 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast. That's gonna give it a depth of flavor and a little bit of cheesy undertone. 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, a half a teaspoon of salt, and 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. Blend it up, and you got some delicious Alfredo sauce, and pour it over some cooked pasta. And everybody's gonna be shocked that there's no dairy and there's no butter or cheese in it. It's really, really delicious. It's just as rich as traditional Alfredo sauce, but it's actually good for you.
It's about just being creative. It's about not so much seeing roadblocks, but rather seeing the opportunities that come with these new aspirations that you may have.
There are 3 reasons to eat out. 1, you don't have to do the dishes. 2, the ambiance. 3, companionship. You never go out to eat to further destroy endothelial cells, okay? Everybody says, well, gosh, Dr. Esselstyn, it's so hard. Aren't they going to have some of these places have oil? Yeah, all of them. When the waiter or the waitress comes to your table, you turn in your seat, take your glasses off, look them squarely in the eye. You must understand that I am deathly allergic to a single drop of any oil. Now, you get creative.
Can I have part of this item on the menu mixed with part of this and put it together? Then the chefs are really actually, if you just ask the question, they're very excited to create something for you.
We have to be that change. We have to be the ones to ask it. And hopefully soon enough demands that we have organic, plant-based foods in restaurants across the country.
We adopted this lifestyle on December 3rd of 2011. Within days, 3 to 4 days, I start to see my sugars plummet, and I'm seeing my weight drop anywhere between 5 to 7 pounds per week. My psoriasis went away. My heartburn, I've not had heartburn since I adopted this lifestyle. And I'm Mexican, I love spicy food. I eat jalapenos and spices, Indian food. And lo and behold, by the end of January 2012, so not quite 60 days later, I was off all 5 of my medications. 4 to 5 months in, my erectile dysfunction went away. So here we are 3.5 going on 4 years later. My health continues to be normal. My A1C levels, my cholesterol levels, my blood pressures. I'm healthier than I was even 20 years ago. So when my wife and I adopted a whole foods plant-based lifestyle, we basically changed the trajectory of my family's future.
So we're gonna make the cauliflower hot wings, which you're just gonna love. They're really easy. So you start with a head of cauliflower, or you can cheat like me and buy pre-cut florets. Just set those aside and whisk together 1/2 cup of plant-based milk, such as soy milk or almond milk, 1/2 cup of flour. I'm using chickpea flour today, but you can use any flour that you happen to have. Whisk in some garlic powder or some onion powder, or even cayenne if you want it to be hotter, or a little nutritional yeast. Then pour your almond milk into your flour and mix it so it forms a batter. Take each floret and dip it into the batter and shake it off just to coat it. Put it on your baking sheet. Bake it for about 12 minutes at 450 degrees, just until it's golden and fork tender. And then when you're done, toss it with some hot sauce or teriyaki sauce or barbecue sauce. Just mix it together, and then you have your hot wings ready to go.
When we're looking at this plant-based nutrition data, it's more than heart disease and risk factors. It's actually a lot of cancer, a lot of inflammatory diseases such as lupus and Sjogren's syndrome and rheumatoid arthritis. And so, plant-based nutrition and good lifestyle are good for a variety of things, not just heart disease.
At the time, my husband was working for MTV, and he was helping recording artists get really fit for videos, And I said, I want to look like one of them. It was purely vanity. We're gonna go to Maui, we're gonna get married, and I want to look as good as I feel emotionally. And I want to do it in a healthy way. And that's what he did. It wasn't about starvation, it wasn't about hurting your body, it was about learning how to take care of your body. Learning how to nourish my body in a way that would cause me to have a fast metabolism. And most people think about fuel in terms of these big building blocks like protein and carbohydrates and fat, but that's not what it's about. It's about vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and enzymes and things that your cells actually need. I had to eat so much food, more than I'd ever eaten before, and drink all this water and take, do all this, eat more than I ever had before. And he told me that was gonna make me actually lose weight. So even though I was skeptical, I did it. And in the 4 months, not only did I go from a size 10 to a size 3, but I was really fit, and I'd felt the best I'd ever felt in my entire life. I had no more aches and pains. My joints felt great. I was energetic. When it was time to get my blood tests and everything, I didn't really think it was gonna affect them, because that wasn't possible. I just, I thought this was just something that improved how I felt. And so I told my husband, well, whatever this is that you did, I'm gonna eat this way from now on because I feel so good. When I got my next round of blood tests a few months later, all the lupus indicators were negative. The doctor had a medical student with him, and he said, this woman alleges to have lupus, but we're not finding any evidence of it. Maybe there's just an error in the test. Go have your wedding, come back, and we'll test again. And we tested again a few months later, and now even the antibodies for the clots were completely negative. And my blood pressure was coming down to that of an athlete. And my genetically high cholesterol that I was told I could do nothing but blame my parents, that's what my doctor had told me as a kid, that was completely normal and in fact optimal. And that's what's happened ever since then. And right now I'm sitting here and it's been 10 years since that first negative blood test, and there's been no sign of lupus coming back, in spite of me continuing to go on and not only expose myself to those things they said I shouldn't, like going out in the sunshine, but also having 2 children. I have continued to actually get healthier and stronger as the years have gone by.
I think we all love processed food for their convenience, but what if you could have the convenience without the processed food part? One of my favorites is macaroni and cheese in a box, which I grew up with like everybody else and used to love. So I've come up with a vegan version that's whole foods. It's something you can keep in your pantry in a jar, pull it out, and take a little cup of it and just mix it up with some non-dairy milk and just pour it over some noodles, and you got an instant, easy dish. Comes together in about 30 seconds, so you better watch carefully or you'll miss it. All right, first I've got a cup of cashews. They go right into my food processor, along with some nutritional yeast and some herbs and spices. Put it in your food processor. You just let it whir for about 3 minutes, and that's it. That mix is ready, good to go in your pantry, ready for you anytime you want it.
After about 2 weeks, the things I noticed was I had a lot more energy. I could walk a lot further and I could walk a lot faster. I dropped a bunch of weight. My cholesterol dropped like a rock. Everything seemed to come back into line.
He now rides a bike. We go for long bike rides.
When I got out of the hospital, I don't know how many medications I had, and I'm off all that now.
He walks miles and is giving Greg back to me.
There's all kinds of diets, but this is a way of life.
Most wives take for granted what a gift a husband is and be able to do those things with their husband. And I'm telling you, I am so thankful.
The doctor called me at home and he says, hey, I just got your blood work back from the lab and I was reviewing your results and you're no longer diabetic. It's really good. We've had this astonishing experience that we've lived through, and it's kind of shaken us awake as far as what's important in life.
That's what so many of us in healthcare want, is to make these changes in people's lives.
It is the most effective and powerful way to treat the broad range of illness that a primary care doctor confronts.
It's just the easiest thing you can do to have better health. It's low-hanging fruit, literally and figuratively.
I did not know how bad I felt until I felt good.
I'm sure there are times in my life when I was younger that I felt better, but there's no time I remember feeling better.
You will lose weight. You will lose your high blood pressure. You will lose your diabetes. You will feel better. You will lose your risk for stroke. You'll lose your risk for dementia. So there are side effects.
Dr. Esselstyn entered my life at the worst time in my life. And I felt like he was a godsend.
My life changed. It's the single best thing I've ever done, by far.
I believe that my chance of getting coronary artery disease is 0.
Whole food plant-based nutrition is indeed the answer to the healthcare crisis in America.
It's all about sustainability of the mind, of the body, and of the planet.
Change doesn't come from the leadership down. The leadership only changes when people wake up and demand that change.
You know, today is a different day. Today is a new opportunity to live the life that you want to live. Not just the one that you're living, but the one that you truly, really want to live.
2 weeks, 3 weeks, all you got to do is try it.
There are people in the world that do it for ethical reasons. There are people that do it for health reasons, and there are people that do it for environmental reasons. And ultimately, it doesn't matter why you do it, because it's a win-win-win.
I've been in medicine for over 30 years, and for the very first time, I can truly look someone in the eye, and I can say, I can heal you.
Realize that there are people who love you, who need you to do this because they need you in their life as well.
It's the best thing that ever happened to me. It saved my life, saved my marriage.
I'm very proud of her. This is progressive medicine. This is correct medicine. This is where medicine should be.
The vegetables and the fruits and the whole grains and the beans, those foods have power that you never imagined. And it's time to put it to work.
Come on. What's on your plate?